And welcome everybody, welcome students, welcome panelists. So our conversation this morning is how the creative and cultural sector has had to pivot during 2020, what's next? And I think we'd all like to know what's next. And the panel that we have today come from an organisation called XpoNorth. And XpoNorth is a year-round support programme for Highlands and Islands-based businesses, which helps grow the region's creative economy. It delivers an annual conference, sector specialist support, 2 funded programmes, heritage and digital, and a range of other activities, including training and industry introductions. And they're a fantastic organisation and a fantastic digital resource, which is why I have invited them along today to talk to you. And our panel, as you can see, are Alex, who is the project manager of XpoNorth, Iain, who is the head of creative industries for Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and Jessica Fox, who is the director, author, screen, and a broadcast specialist advisor at XpoNorth. You're very, very welcome, panelists. And I'm going to say my thanks now because I think the take that we're using today is going to give us an abrupt cut off at the end of the conversation. So thank you very much for coming along today. So I would like to start by handing over to Alex. Alex is going to chair the discussion today, but I will be here on the sidelines picking up any questions that come in that I think would be interesting to put to the panel. So Alex, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thanks for asking us to be part of today. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for the introduction to XpoNorth, Anne. And I think what we'll do as we go through this conversation is we'll maybe expand a little on what XpoNorth does instead of me giving a big introduction to it at the minute. The other thing that would be great to see if we can is it would be fantastic if we can make this conversation pretty interactive. So as Anne said, if you guys have any questions, we'd be really pleased to try and answer them for you, and please just pop them in the chat and we'll keep an eye on that. I'm really pleased to be joined by 2 guys from our team, Jessica and Iain. So I'm just going to quickly ask both of you to give a quick introduction to yourself, if that's okay. And I'll start with you, Iain, if you can do that for us.
Sure. Well, my background was I worked in music for a good number of years and made my living that way. And then I guess, fortunately, I managed to get a job with the Economic Development Agency, Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And that was really finding ways that we could provide support to creative businesses. And XpoNorth grew out of that one. So my job basically is to try and find ways that we can help folk get a business going. So arts for its own sake is a good thing, but my particular interest is around business.
Awesome, thanks, Iain. Jessica, you've got a really interesting story. Can you maybe just give us a quick snapshot of your kind of backstory, how you came to work with a bunch like us?
Sure. So clearly I don't have a Scottish accent. I've been living in Scotland for about 15 years. I'm originally from America. I'm a writer and a director, and I used to do a lot of nerd whispering, which means I worked with science organizations and helped them tell stories for a day job, because all artists need sometimes a day job as your career is being built. I had dreams of working in a bookshop by the sea in Scotland, which is a totally another tangent. And I ended up coming over here doing that and staying and happily finding XpoNorth. So right now I'm the screen and broadcast sector specialist, which means I cover film, TV, all kinds of screen content, sometimes publishing, and also work with LevelUp students and clients, kind of figuring out how to develop their careers and projects. And I love it. Not to plug it, and I don't have to plug it because I'm a contractor, but XpoNorth is the best job I've ever had. I love working with them. They really make things happen. So excited to see all the students here today and answer any questions you guys have.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Great. Yeah, Jessica quickly touched upon a program that XpoNorth run in collaboration with UHI, which we'll maybe collectively touch on as we go through this. But essentially, we want to keep it on theme around that. I mean, we'll happily start to move through the gears in terms of what XpoNorth does for the business network across the region, what it does internationally, and around the conference and how we've had to move as a project to be of best use to our network. But just quickly, for anyone who doesn't know, LevelUp is a project that we partnered with UHI on, and conceptually what we try to do with that is we run almost like a commercial industry interface, horrible language, but that kind of tries to run alongside the academic journey. And we're almost one academic year into that, and we've had some really interesting findings and results out of that. So we'll maybe kind of segue in and out of that as we go through the conversation. But Anne was keen for us maybe, guys, to touch on this idea of career paths into the sector. So a few things that sprung to mind immediately, again, things that we find through going through the journey of LevelUp is, what do we do when we're in academia, and what do we do as we're maybe approaching the end of that, given the kind of unique dynamics of our sector. And Jessica, you were speaking about an interesting thing earlier, which I probably want to start on just in case I forget about it. But this idea of internships, of placements, of how do you navigate that? I mean, you've got quite an interesting story, and one I think that doesn't get told enough. I mean, do you want to tell us maybe your experience on that and some of your ideas and how you did that?
Yeah.
Like how did you enter the sector? How did you go about that journey?
Definitely. So basically, I have done everything wrong. So if you guys can learn from me, I think that would be brilliant. So you don't have to make the same mistakes. But I started over and over again trying kind of trainee programs and assistant workshops. And I found that I wasn't actually making the art that I really wanted to make. So I applied for loads of things and nothing was working. And so I decided to list out who I really admired and wrote them a completely sincere email. I know that sounds naive. Sometimes naivete actually pays off, but people really do respond to sincerity and to passion. And one of the people that responded was a woman named Amanda Palmer, who was lead singer of the Dresden Dolls and now does her kind of own solo stuff sometimes, and sometimes with the Dresden Dolls. And when I wrote her, I think the title was SOS, by the way, my email to her. And I basically was like, help, I'm stuck in cubicle land. I want to make art. I don't know how to make this transition. I need to pay the bills. All I want to do is be a filmmaker. And what I was doing was working for PBS, Public Television in the States, which sounds really fancy, but it was a little Devil Wears Prada in the nicest way possible. I was like getting people's dry cleaning. I really wasn't doing the art I wanted to make. And I think she found the email so funny that she was, sorry, this is a little bit long, but she's like, yeah, no problem. Meet me in Woodstock. I'll interview you. We need a videographer for our tour. So I go all the way to Woodstock. If anybody knows where that is, it's outside New York City. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I took like bus after bus. I finally got to Woodstock. I went to the cafe. I was so nervous. I remember having like a little packet of drawings I did about like what kinds of things I might do for them and what style I would do. And I was so excited. And I waited and I waited, and an hour goes by and no one shows up. 2 hours go by, no one's there. And suddenly like the cafe's transitioning from breakfast to lunch. And I'm like, she was supposed to hear me 2 hours ago. What do I do? I started feeling really terrible. And I was like looking in the bus schedule about how to get back. 3 hours go by and I see Amanda Palmer come in with her yoga mat, and she's like getting a coffee, and she goes and leaves. And so I run after her and I'm like, Amanda, we were supposed to meet. She totally forgot and went to her yoga class. And she came back in and met with me, and maybe because she pitied me, hired me like on the spot. And that was my first proper gig. But the two things I would really stress out of that is never be embarrassed to reach out. And never be embarrassed to be like sincere and honest, because people really do resonate with that. Even if you don't think they offer internships, go for it. The other thing is persistence, because how important that position is to you and that role is to you and that opportunity is to you is not as important as the person giving it. So it really requires persistence to keep on banging on doors and saying, look, I want to show up for this. I want to do this. I know the last thing I'll say is on Radio 4, there was this whole expose on internships, whether they're fair or not. And it would be very interesting to hear the students' opinion about how they feel about free work. What I would say is don't view it as work. It is networking. You're expanding your connections well beyond the university when you take a position like that, and you create the own boundaries of what you think is appropriate, how many hours you want to put in. because people won't create those boundaries for you, but they are really good opportunities to make more connections, and those connections will pay off.
Awesome. Just quickly, while you set up, just before I come to you with the same question, Iain, is because I guess we consistently hear this idea or this difficulty, and I experienced it, I'm sure we all have, is this idea that we have to give something of ourselves for free until we build a reputation, or we build some credibility, or we build that network. I hate using that word, but we build that network, that batch of contacts. I mean, what's your experience on that, Jess, in terms of, how much do we have to do? How can we get the courage or the confidence to draw that line and realize when what we're doing has some kind of commercial value to it?
I know it's really difficult, because I think at first, basically, you're building trust. So when you give something away for free, you're building trust in collaborating that, yes, I haven't proved myself to you. I do have this talent. I know I can do it. At some point, that trust is built. You've done that legwork. And now it's time to say, actually, that trust is built. I have a value. I know I have a value. Amanda Palmer's actually Art of Asking is a really good book, because it talks about why artists should always demand money for their work, and that people should be paying them, and why it's okay to ask for money, and why it's okay to take money for kind of the art you do. She said that if she asked any artist who feels really weird about asking to be paid, if they asked that artists, hey, if you had lots of money, would you give any of that money to the arts? It's a no-brainer. They're like, of course we would. So you shouldn't feel weird about asking or taking it either.
Thanks so much. Brilliant. Iain, I guess the same question to you, because we're trying to explore maybe different pathways into the career, and you've got a really interesting position in the creative industries, have done for some time. What's the mechanics of your journey, Iain? Because I know you had quite an interesting academic experience internationally as well. I mean, how did you come to be head of creative industries at HIE?
Well, believe it or not, the answer to that probably is because I played the pipes. So I've been working in music. I was from the area. I was really keen on staying up here, and a job came up to provide support to music through an organisation called High Arts at the time, and I managed to convince them that I knew lots about the music industry. I then discovered how little I actually knew, but I did manage to convince them at the time. But to be honest, it was one of those things, and it's something that I've seen all the time since then, is that jobs come up or opportunities come up, and you think, oh, I am not qualified for that. I'm not capable. I couldn't do it. They wouldn't even consider me. And then you discover the person that gets it is totally unqualified as well. That they never seem more qualified than you. So what I would say, the first thing is just to have a bit of confidence and go for stuff. If you see an opportunity, try and grab it. And it would really amaze you the number of times that will start to happen. At first, it's really slow. It's a bit difficult to get in. But once you people start to recognize the fact that you're always chasing for opportunities, looking for a chance to do something, then the door starts to open. And okay, it might be at a small scale to begin with, but the opportunities just grow in that. And I have to admit that even in this current job, which in a sense is quite an advantage, because I've got a job title, there's an organization behind what I'm doing, but actually it's still the same thing. It's about, how can I spin a line that's going to make somebody actually read my email or give me the time of day? And even in this job, we started with no cash, no plan, there was just nothing there. I mean, I had to find money to buy a phone and a desk and a computer and stuff, and it was just a case of go out, beg, borrow, and steal. And I would certainly say is that just look for any opportunity you can to get your name noticed. Just go for anything you can. And the one thing that is that XpoNorth, since its inception, has been great in that there are lots of work opportunities that come up. So there's the Twitter pitch that comes up every year for writers that gets their work in front of agents and things, or you've got the opportunity if you're a composer to work with the Sky Arts, Sky team, the music team for composing and licensing and placement. All of these kind of things crop up, and just go for them. You may or may not get that opportunity. It may or may not work out, but it's a great way of getting your name seen. And you do start to notice that the same people are coming forward, and that level of enthusiasm. And as I said, what I would do is look for anything at all that you can put into your portfolio, anything that you can claim you've done. I mean, again, I guess one of the things before moving into this job was that I actually took a series of part-time jobs as a copywriter as well, writing articles for magazines and papers and stuff. I had never done anything like that in my life, but thought, how hard can it be? Well, I discovered that, but again, it was just these things. It was stuff about getting your name noticed, and I think sometimes you just have to have a brass neck and say, I can do it. I am good enough to do that.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, to stay on this theme quickly for a bit, because I know it's an important one that the guys wanted to cover today. I guess, Jessica, one of the things is, well, two things really I wanted to put to you. One is, I think sometimes when we're a student, certainly when I was, you looked for the very traditional placement opportunities that were quite visible, and they were high, there was a lot of applications for them, incredibly competitive. I mean, your story is really interesting in terms of you going out, trying to make something happen. I mean, what's your kind of advice for people breaking the fear around that, in terms of making themselves so uncomfortable, maybe feeling that they're kind of slightly less than? I mean, what's your advice to anyone around how did you go about getting the confidence internally to approach it like that?
I call it hubris. But yeah, I think that you have to, if you don't have this well of confidence within that seems to be able to take a lot of the knockbacks, because there are a lot of pivots you have to do. I know the word pivots in the title of today's. What Iain said, I just want to highlight, where an opportunity came up and he thought, why not? I'm going to try this. If you don't have that internally, there's something really easy you can do. You pretend you have it. You totally pretend that you can do it. And after a while, the more you pretend, the more you realize you're just actually doing it. I was thinking, Alex, of the question that you asked, which is a really important question, and I think has to do actually with that idea of stepping outside your comfort zone. And I'm really crap at applying to things. Maybe everyone has their own juju of how they are able to get opportunities, but every time I apply for something, I never get it. So I always have to figure out other ways of trying to get jobs. Whether it's, for me, it's through meeting people and showing them my work. And just to highlight what you asked, because it's a really important question for students, I think, is how much do you give away for free? And how much do you start demanding actually you get paid for it? There's always a fine line, but I'm going to give you like 3 examples. So that might illustrate stuff. Even where I am at with my career, so I wrote a book. My second book, I still had to write on spec, which for people who don't know what that means is you have to write it for free. And so I had to get other jobs and write my second book. And then you start creating the boundaries of, okay, look, this content's out there. I think it has value. Or I'm starting to have confidence it has value. And then so you start demanding being paid for it. And I can imagine with musicians, if you're an unknown band and someone asks you to do a gig for free, you might want not to do a full gig. You might be like, no problem, we'll do 3 songs. But after 3 songs, it's clear that you guys are good. And it's clear that, there's an audience for it. And then you start having a little bit more confidence to say, actually, for a full gig, this is what it's. But figuring out where that line is for yourself is really important. For TV, we did a pitch deck. We've done a lookbook for those. And we have this great idea. We have actors attached that have pretty big names. And still, because we've done film before, not TV, they wanted us to outline every single episode and give them the scripts. And we said no. So we're starting to take it. We thought that's too much to give away for free. So you do have to constantly negotiate that. But to go a unique route into the industry there's every single possibility out there. So if general applying isn't for you and you don't feel like you're getting the response you want by applying to programs, come talk to a sector specialist. XpoNorth has lots of them in all different kinds of industries. You can ask people advice. This is the other hack that I will offer the students, and I'll stop talking. But if you ask someone their advice rather than for a job, you're starting to establish a relationship with them. And so asking for advice, people really feel good about giving it. They feel good about getting the attention. They feel good about offering you advice. And once that relationship is established, then you can start asking them for opportunities.
Yeah, I think that there's something that really crops up in that one as well, is that you need to, I hate talking to folk that I don't know. I find it really uncomfortable. It's not something that I particularly enjoy, but I had to make the effort to do. And what I would say is that you're in a great position just now because you've got a context and a reason for contacting anybody. And that's the fact you're a student. And most people will respond really well to a student taking interest and showing initiative and wanting to find out things and wanting to talk to them. I do say most people because there will inevitably be some who are just don't respond, but by and large, the worst that can possibly happen is they just don't reply to you. But at the moment, you've got a really good context that allows you a great excuse that will get you in the door very often to have that initial conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Good point. I mean, another thing that comes up, I guess, a lot for us in LevelUp, and it's been some time since I was a student. I mean, I'm aware of how I did things, and it was, but I'm also very cognizant it was a very different time. I feel as well. I think, if anything, now I think there's a range of opportunities that weren't available to me, or I certainly don't remember them being available. But one thing that does come up, and Iain, maybe you want to tackle this one first, is I think sometimes in the creative sectors we have a very headstrong vision of where we think we want to get to. And very often, if I look back over my journey in particular, it's not been a straight line by any means. And there's been other parts of the area, the sector, that I would never have thought I may have touched on, but that's the way my journey had to go. I mean, what's your experience of that, Iain, in terms of, how flexible do we have to be in order to remain in the sector?
Really flexible, I think, is the answer. I mean, first of all, the world has changed, and it's not the same option for you work in music or you work in screen or you work in publishing. A lot of that stuff has changed, and an awful lot of the opportunities are coming up where you really need to be able to do more than just that one sector that you're interested in. So you need a range of skills. For one thing, the ability to use social media, the ability to work online, basic digital skills and things are more essential than ever. I mean, let's face it, we were still doing tapestries or cave paintings or things when I was a student, so it's kind of changed from that. But those skills are definitely, everybody requires them now. The other thing is all businesses need them, so there are opportunities that way if you have those basic skills. But I think one of the things is that, yes, get caught up in thinking in your own dream of where you're trying to go and what you want to make, but please stay flexible about that and realize that there are several routes to getting to the place you want to be, and you may have to take a fairly winding path to actually achieve that. And I've got to say, the one thing that really stands out, when we've talked to lots of different employers and lots of folk with running businesses and things, the one thing that's always come out is, more than anything, they want to find folk that are creative problem solvers. So what they want is people that they can work with who will be told, right, this is the problem, and you just go and fix it. They don't want you to come back and talk about how you've done it. They don't want to know what the approach is. They just want the problem to be got rid of and dealt with. So I think first and foremost, that's really the major skill that you want to have, is just to be able to look at the problem and to calmly think about, how can I resolve that? And that tends to be, I think, probably the biggest skill that anybody can have, is just be able to step back and think clearly about how to fix a problem.
I've got it. Sorry, Jess, just we've got a quick question on that on this theme, maybe before we move into another area, but I'm just going to read it out quickly. What steps should you take if you're unsure what placements to go for and what particular creative field you're interested in? I'm really interested in the creative industries, but I really struggle to work out exactly what particular area I want to go into, so never know how to go about applying for internships and placements when I'm unsure what I want to do. An interesting one, isn't it? I guess because it feeds into the conversation we've had there about there's such a range of routes I can take, and Iain, you made a really good point earlier that the silos seem to be coming down. We're much more maybe moving into content ecosystems, for want of a better way to put it. If I'm quite unsure what route I want to take, what's any advice you guys have there? Because you both must have hit that point where you just were slightly unsure, lacked a bit of confidence about exactly how you wanted to move your career forward.
I think just to highlight what Iain said, and it kind of answers the question a little bit. At least in the film world, a lot of film students, when I went to film school, were very keen on what they wanted to be. So I'm a director, I'm an editor, I'm an actor. And I think Iain's request of people to stay open-minded, a question that you start with usually is, I want to be blank. Or in this case, I don't know what I want to be blank. Instead, a better question to ask yourself perhaps is, I want to get better at blank, because it opens up the possibilities of maybe not having to be forced so much into knowing where you want to head in the creative industries, but gives you a little bit of a focus. So I want to get better at editing. I want to get better at drawing. I want to get better at music. It will start guiding you a little bit better along the way. Also, to Iain's point, you would not believe the other industries that really value creativity, and not just the creative industry. So following what you want to get better at, I think will be very surprising. I was so surprised that in the sciences, they took me very seriously as an artist. So I've made a career out of working for science organizations like NASA. I was hired as NASA's storyteller. I was so surprised that those skills were valued there. So I think if you are unsure where in the creative industries you feel you fit, you really need to be conscious about what's starting to interest you and what you want to get better at, and don't feel you need to know the end destination. That will just help you along one step.
And I think the other thing is that Alex had already mentioned the online resources at the XpoNorth website. Is go in and have a look through that stuff. There is, in fact, Jessica's done a massive interviews with people, and obviously they're really good because Jessica did them. But go in and have a look at those, and just hear people talking about their careers, about what
Lovely.
they do, how it works. Again, that will start to spark off ideas about what things appeal to you most, what ideas, and again, we'll just give you some clues as to directions you might want to go in, what skills you might want to try and build up. But as I said, there's a high likelihood that you've never even heard of the job that you may finish up with, because there are so many opportunities occurring now with jobs that just didn't exist, and bits of work that didn't exist until recently. So don't be too set and too worried about knowing exactly where you want to go with it just now. But as I said, make use of things like those archives at the XpoNorth site, just to start giving you a bit of background on what other people do, what catches your attention, who do you rate. And I think what Jessica did there by picking people out that she really admired and got in touch with them, why not? That's as good an option as any for really just giving you some steers and guidance on where you might go.
Totally.
Yeah, good point. And we're not here to kind of spread the message anyway, but absolutely, as XpoNorth, we've got quite an incredible content library of fantastic sessions that are absolutely applicable to whatever stage you're at in your journey. And I think that's something that was always drilled into me quite early was to become aware of the sector, consume as much information on the sector I wanted to move into as I possibly could. And it was much harder then. I think now it's far easier than arguably it's ever been. So an XpoNorth's an awesome resource. I think we've migrated the whole project across to this type of delivery. I think there's a huge library of content there that's really useful.
Sorry, Alex, I was just going to say, there's one thing that has occurred to me though that perhaps we should mention, is that the one thing that you want to be clear about though, and it doesn't matter what the answer is and which direction, if either you want to go in it, but you do need to give a little thought to whether you want to do this as a fully commercial activity, or whether what you're looking at is getting into arts management, some kind of cultural career. Because although there's a definite crossover between the two things, the drivers and the goals are not the same. So, as I mentioned, arts for its own sake is a very valid thing. And it may be that going into that route, you need to be looking more at things like Creative Scotland, about where grants are available for art and stuff. There's issues around that. There are things you can look at. But going into the commercial side can be very different, bearing in mind that you are then completely dependent on providing an audience or a consumer with what that consumer wants. And so it may not be what you want to do as an artist. So it's just to be aware of the demands of both sides. Both are fulfilling, both are valid, but they're not necessarily identical.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there's one just to highlight, if you guys are dipping into the digital shorts or the podcasts, and there's great blogs that people have written. There's one woman in particular, actually, that XpoNorth interviewed, called Diane McCulley, and she wrote The Gig Economy. And I think that might be a really interesting interview for folks to watch, because when you're at university, things might seem very linear. You're going from one year to the next, there's a cycle, you feel like you're kind of achieving and you're getting there, and it's leading up to graduation. And then when you get out into the world, especially in creative businesses, it's probably more of a project-oriented economy, and things work in circles. And reframing your mindset for that kind of world. I think the interview is really a good start.
Brilliant. And we'll circle back into attending XpoNorth in a minute, but there's a couple of questions that have come up. I guess a big one is that we're constantly hit right now, particularly in the creative, cultural, digital sectors, with the impact COVID's had. And it would be irresponsible, I guess, of us to an extent to not touch on that as directly as we can. Bearing in mind that we may not have all the answers here, but we'll certainly try and hit it. I mean, an interesting thing that's come up, Iain, I know that we've all talked about it a lot, and we're finding it as we go through the LevelUp journey in particular, is for me, I think lots of the time students have a set of skills that are incredibly attractive to the commercial marketplace, very in demand, but maybe not incredibly obvious, or it may not appear that way. And I think there's a range of opportunities that have come up across the pandemic, because I guess the ways that we were planning and working, and particularly where innovation is concerned, I guess we've just got there quicker in many respects. I mean, let's not, no avoiding the fact that this is an incredibly disruptive time. But I guess to try and get some energy behind this, I mean, what's your take on that, Iain? What have you found where opportunities have come up maybe quicker, that are maybe more open and accessible to the skills that younger people have, particularly those coming through kind of higher level academic courses at the minute?
Yeah. For me, the really obvious one is something that I mentioned earlier. It's around the ability to use social media effectively. It's about finding different ways to tell stories, and it's about how you work online and engage with people. So even prior to the pandemic, the direction of travel was very much around creating an experience for your customers, for your consumer base, to make them feel engaged in what you're doing, to let them feel they have a role to play in producing and developing ideas, to get them talking about you rather than necessarily doing all your own marketing, get them involved in it, and also about crowdsourcing ideas and testing them out with them. Something that most of you will have is that you have an ability to do stuff online and to use those digital skills that you have. At the moment, it may just be about keeping in touch with friends, but you can apply that in a business sense, and all businesses require that. And you'd be amazed at how limited the digital skills are in so many businesses, because it's folk that haven't grown up with these things. It's people that have never really used the different platforms. They're not necessarily sure how to do that. And you have an advantage in that you have already built up that experience, even if you haven't yet applied it in a business context. And I think that for me is the real opening that's coming up for the future. It's about how do you engage directly with the customers? How do you make them feel valued?
Yeah. Jessica, do you have any thoughts on that quickly? And then we'll and I think we're wrapping up fairly soon, aren't we? But just if anyone does have any quick last minute questions, we'd love to hear them. Jessica, maybe you want to just maybe respond to that question too, and I'll just quickly check for any last questions.
Sure, I would just agree with what Iain said. I think that, you already have so much tools in your toolboxes that are really valuable to people who are looking to hire you. And storytelling online is everything right now. So being able to do storytelling on Instagram Reels, TikTok, whatever your art form is, being able to say who you are and what your story is and show that you can flex those social media muscles is important. And actually, they're so important. XpoNorth is doing a TikTok film festival in the lead up to the festival this year, where there's going to be sponsors. So there's going to be businesses that are offering prizes every day. You're basically going to have 24 hours to recreate a famous movie scene that they put out on TikTok, Sweeted. And we have the Sweeted Film Festival in California giving out a masterclass about how to best recreate film scenes. So if you do want to start practicing what it feels like to stand out on social media and practice your storytelling, we do have opportunities.
Awesome. Just quickly before we hammer home the XpoNorth message, we've got a question come in at the minute for you, Jess, I guess, which feeds nicely into what you're talking about there. If you're interested in storytelling and writing, what is the best way to present your work? Should you have a portfolio that you can send out?
That's a really good question. I think to highlight again, what Iain said about being students, there are a lot from Publishing Scotland and the Book Trust, there are a lot of competitions and grants available for first-time writers. And what they ask for when you apply is a portfolio of work. And what they mean by a portfolio of work is maybe a couple of short stories, if prose is your thing. If screenwriting's your thing, you've got to have an example of a feature script under your belt. I think that would blow people away that you've been able to sit down and actually finish a feature script. So having a couple of stories, an opening chapter to a novel, a feature script, those kinds of portfolios, yes, are hugely important if you're looking to be a writer, because when you apply for grants, people will ask you for them.
Fantastic. Another one quickly, if we can try and get through some. That's a good one for you, Iain, possibly. I'd say I'm a recent graduate with a degree in chemistry rather than an arts degree. Do you have any advice about shifting into the creative sector, as I feel I'm a step behind most other graduates?
I'm not sure that you will be, because you still have to communicate with people regardless of what your degree was. You've been writing stuff, you've been pulling things together. And what I would say is it really is about this idea of how do you get a story across to the customer base. Now, your audience up till now may have been more scientific, but that's still an audience who are looking for those creative skills in some degree. So I think I do think that the opportunities are there. You have got skills. You just need to have the confidence to try some of the opportunities that we've spoken about, whether it's XpoNorth or elsewhere, but just push through it. It certainly is not a reason not to go for that if that's what you're interested in.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Great. So I think we're out of time, but just quickly before we wrap up, XpoNorth 16th, 17th of June this year, fantastic platform, and we've got some amazing content coming up. the great thing about XpoNorth is that unlike lots of industry events, there's less barriers to access. It's completely free to attend, an international program. Again, this year we're producing it digitally, but we're producing it through an app. So we're going to try and make it as immersive and interactive as we can, and to feel much more like a physical conference. Although there's lots of, we're finding as we go through this type of delivery model, there's lots of things that make it, there's lots of pros to us delivering it this way, and registration's open now. It's completely free. Again, as well as that, every week we release either content or workshops or opportunities of some kind. So please sign up to our mailing list. Please drop us an email. Let us know if there's anything we can help you with, and we'd love to have a relationship with you. And I think, are we close to the end, or are we able to take any final questions or any final thoughts?
I think we're close to the end. Just in case, has anybody got a final thought that they would like to share with the panel? Can I just say thank you, Jessica, thank you, Alex, thank you, Iain. That was brilliant. It was great. I've written lots of notes which I'm going to share with the students afterwards. And thanks especially, Jessica, for some of those book recommendations. I think they were very, very useful to add on to the advice that you gave. So thanks, students, for coming. I hope you found that really useful. I certainly did. Just a reminder that all of our sessions today are being recorded, and you'll find them on our YouTube channel at UFG Careers. So once again, thank you, XpoNorth, Jessica, Alex, and Iain.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.